The sun was high and merciless over the Navy SEAL training compound. The ground was dry and cracked. Dust floated through the air like smoke. A line of young recruits, muscles aching and faces soaked in sweat, crawled through the mud pit. Shouted through pain, lifted tires, pulled ropes, and pushed their bodies to the limit. Every second was a test. Every breath was a battle. But while everyone was focused on training, there was one man who didn't fit in. He was standing quietly at the far end of the training field, an old black man, silent, alone, sweeping sand off the cement walkway with a wooden broom. His back was slightly bent, his face wrinkled from time and sun. His clothes were plain and loose, faded shirt tucked into old cargo pants, boots worn thin from use. No name tag, no badge, just a tired man doing a small, forgotten job. He'd never spoke, never smiled. He didn't even look at the recruits, just swept. Slow, steady, like he had all the time in the world. The recruits noticed him, of course. "Who's that?" One of them whispered while wiping sweat from his eyes. "Janitor or something?" Another replied. "Doesn't look like staff." Someone else muttered. They watched as the man tripped slightly over a boot lying on the ground. A few recruits laughed. "It's probably someone's grandpa," one joked. "Yeah," said another. "Maybe the Navy lets retired folks hang around to feel useful." The laughter was soft but cruel. The old man didn't react. He simply picked up the boot, placed it neatly by the wall, and kept sweeping. There was something strange about the way he moved, to calm, to focused. Not like a confused old man, not like someone weak, but still, no one paid him much attention. They were too busy proving their worth, trying to survive one of the hardest military trainings in the world. But one recruit did watch him more than the others. His name was Derek Washington, a sharp-eyed young man from Georgia. He was quiet, too, like the old man, but curious. He didn't laugh with the others. He simply observed. Something about the old man bothered Derek, not in a bad way, but like a puzzle. He moved like a soldier. Even his sweeping had rhythm and control. The way he looked around, not just with tired eyes, but with alertness, like he was trained to read danger in silence. Later that day, while the rest of the recruits gathered for lunch, the old man stood near the edge of the field, staring at the obstacle course. His eyes didn't blink much. His hands were still. It wasn't the gaze of a janitor admiring some rope towers. It was the look of a man remembering something. Something heavy. "Yo, Derek," Jake, one of the loud recruits, elbowed him. "You keep staring at that guy like he's your long-lost dad." Derek didn't laugh. "He doesn't belong here," he said. Jake smirked. "Exactly. Just some old dude hanging around? Maybe he thinks he's still in the game. Or maybe," Derek said slowly, "he was in the game once and got out." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What, you think he's some ex-SEAL legend, just sweeping floors for fun?" Derek didn't answer. The idea didn't sound like a joke to him. It sounded possible. That night, after lights out, the recruits were supposed to rest. Derek couldn't sleep. His bunk was near a window, and the moonlight lit the edge of the training yard. And then he saw something. Out there, in the dark, an old man not sweeping, not resting, doing push-dash-ups. Slow, controlled, not just 5 or 10, not even 50. Counted at least 100 and the man's breathing didn't change. Then the old man stood, turned, and suddenly rolled across the ground in a smooth combat move. A perfect military roll. No shaking, no stiffness. Like a trained soldier. Derek's heart skipped a beat. "What the hell?" he whispered to himself. He kept watching. The man moved to the pull-up bar. Not a sound. He lifted himself 10, 20, 30 times. Each pull like a machine. Then he dropped, stood still, and stared up at the night sky. After a few minutes, he picked up the broom again and disappeared behind the barracks. The next morning, Derek told the others what he saw. They laughed. "You saw what?" Jake said between bites of his energy bar. "I'm serious," Derek said. He was doing combat moves, like real SEAL level. "Stuff. Bro." Jake rolled his eyes. "You probably dreamed it, or you've been drinking too much protein powder." Derek didn't argue. He just waited, watched. The mystery was growing, and then something happened during the afternoon. Driller recruit had left his rifle leaning against the bench. The old man walked by, paused, picked it up, and in less than 3 seconds, he cleared the chamber, checked the safety, and reset the weapon. Flawless, smooth, like muscle memory. Then he turned to Derek, looked him straight in the eye, and said something. Just one line, low, calm. You. Boys think war is about muscles. It's not. Then he handed the rifle back and walked away. This time even Jake didn't laugh. What the hell was that? He whispered. No one had an answer. From that moment on, the teasing stopped. The laughter faded. Now they watched him, wondered about him. Who was he? Why was he really here? Some thought he was a retired instructor. Some said he might have been injured and now served in a quiet job. Others thought he was just mentally not all there anymore, but Derek wasn't guessing anymore. He knew one thing for sure. That man was no ordinary janitor, no ordinary old man, and definitely not someone to mess with. The question now was, who? Is he really? What was he hiding under those old clothes and quiet eyes? The heat pressed down harder the next morning. The sun was ruthless, and sweat dripped off every face as the young SEAL recruits trained harder than ever. They were expected to crawl, run, climb, and push past pain that could break most men. But while they battled the course, the old man returned to the edges of the field sweeping sand again. He didn't look tired. He didn't look weak. He just moved quietly, broom in hand, head slightly down. Most recruits tried to ignore him. But now, after what they had seen, pull-ups, the weapon check, the perfect combat role, ignoring him wasn't so easy. One recruit whispered, "Why is he even here?" Another said, "Maybe he's part of a weird test." Jake muttered under his breath, "He's just trying to act tough, probably wants attention." But even he didn't sound sure anymore. Derek, however, couldn't take his eyes off the man. There was something in the way he walked, not slow but measured, like every step was calculated. Like he had walked across battlefields, not just sidewalks. During a short water break, the recruits rested near the benches. That's when Derek decided to test something. He waited until the old man passed by, then stood in front of him. "Excuse me, sir," he said quietly. "Have you ever served?" The man didn't stop sweeping, didn't even look at him. But, after a second, he replied, "I've served many places. Not all of them wear flags." Then he kept walking. The recruits nearby turned to Derek, confused. What did he say? What does that even mean? Derek didn't answer. But now he was sure this man had seen real things. Back at the barracks later that night, the recruits rested in their bunks, too exhausted to talk. But Derek couldn't sleep again. He sat by the window, staring out into the darkness, hoping to see the man again. But this time, nothing. The yard was empty. That made it even stranger. Where did he go? Did he live on base? Why was he never seen during official base hours? He asked a base admin the next day. "Excuse me? The older gentleman who sweeps the grounds, does he work here full-time?" The admin looked puzzled. "You mean Mr. Brooks?" Derek perked up. "Brooks. Yeah. Elijah Brooks, I think. Shows up when he wants. No one really gave him a job. But he helps out. Quiet guy. No file on him? Not really. Some say he used to be someone. Others say he's just ... a ghost of the past." That answer sent a chill through Derek. Word starts to spread by the end of the week. More recruits were watching the old man. No one teased him now. One afternoon, he walked by 2 soldiers struggling with a rope climb. They were stuck halfway, legs shaking. He didn't say much. Stood below and called out, "Use your legs, not your pride." Both soldiers took his advice and made it up. They looked down at him, stunned. He gave a slight nod, then walked. "Away? How did he know that?" one of them asked. "I think he's done this before," said the other. Not everyone respected him, but not everyone was impressed. Lieutenant Mason, the officer in charge of training, didn't like the attention. This old man was getting. He watched the way the recruits began looking at Elijah Brooks with admiration. It made him feel weak. Worse, it made him feel small. He's not part of this program, Mason snapped during a meeting with staff. He's a distraction. No one knows if he even belongs here. One officer asked, "Should we remove him?" Mason shook his head. "No, let's make him want to leave." A test of strength the next day. Jake, still unsure about the old man, decided to challenge him. "All right," he shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. "If you're as strong as they say, prove it." The old man didn't look at him. "I'm talking to you, old man. Think you can beat me in a pull-up contest?" Some recruits laughed nervously. Others waited in silence. The man slowly turned. He didn't smile. Didn't blink. He just walked to the bar. Jake followed. "I'll go first," Jake said, hopping up. 1, 2, 3. Up to 30, he was strong. Then Elijah stepped forward, grabbed the bar. He didn't stop at 30. He passed 50, then 80. 100 and 110. By 200, even the officers had stopped to watch. He dropped down silently. No sweat, no breathing hard. The camp was completely still. Jake stared at him in disbelief. He couldn't speak. No one could. A symbol revealed, as Elijah picked up his broom to leave. His sleeve lifted slightly. That's when Derek saw it. The tattoo. A faded, powerful image on, eagle clutching a trident, and anchored the Navy SEAL insignia. He froze. So did Jake, and others who saw it. No way. Someone whispered, "That's a real SEAL tattoo. It can't be. They don't give that to just anyone." Derek stepped forward, eyes wide. He was one of them. Questions. Begin that evening, no one spoke much at dinner. Even the cockiest recruits were silent. Derek pulled up a file on his laptop, typed in, "Elijah Brooks, Navy SEAL." It took time. Many files were restricted, but then he found something. Elijah Ghost Brooks, SEAL Commander. Multiple deployments. Mia missing in action 7 years ago, never returned to duty, presumed dead, or gone now, sweeping floors at a training compound. It didn't make sense, but it explained everything. His strength, his silence, his scars, his eyes. The mystery. Derek printed the file and showed it to Jake. Jake read the page and looked up. "We made fun of him." Derek nodded. "He's not here to clean. He's here to see who's worthy." Jake swallowed hard. "Then we failed." Derek didn't agree. "Not yet," he said, "but we can still learn from him." Base was quiet. It's quiet. The sun had long disappeared, leaving the training. Compound soaked in deep shadows and a silver moonlight that stretched across the gravel and dirt. Most recruits had collapsed in their bunks, muscles aching, eyes barely open. The day's drills had been brutal, exactly how SEAL training was meant to be, but one recruit couldn't sleep. Derek lay on his cot, wide awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling. His mind kept repeating one thing, that tattoo, the trident, the eagle, the anchor, now the mark of a real Navy SEAL. He turned his head toward the window. Cool air slipped through, small crack in the glass, and then he saw movement. There, near the far end of the training field, a dark shape moved silently between the buildings. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't an officer. It was him, Elijah Brooks. The old man walked with purpose, even at night. No broom this time. Just a small pack slung over his shoulder. Derek sat up, heart racing. He glanced at the clock. 2:07 a.m. What was he doing awake at this hour? Where was he going? Quietly, Derek slipped out of his bunk. He grabbed his hoodie and boots and moved like a shadow down the hallway. Not a sound. Years of sneaking out back home had taught him how to move silently, but this wasn't a joke anymore. This felt serious. Following the ghost, Derek stepped outside and ducked behind a low wall. He peeked around the corner. Elijah was walking fast, crossing the edge of the base near the obstacle course. Derek stayed low, following at a distance. He felt like a spy, but what he saw next made his breath stop. The old man dropped his pack and began training. Not just light stretches. Not old man warm-ups, real training. A warrior in the dark, Elijah dropped to the ground, one-arm push-ups. Fast and precise. Not 5, not 10. He kept going. 30, 50. Then he rolled forward in complete silence and leaped onto a stack of crates. One jump. No noise. Perfect landing. From there, he climbed a 12-foot rope with just his hands. No legs. No shaking. Like it was nothing. Derek's mouth dropped open. This man wasn't just once a SEAL. He still trained like one. Why? Why hide this? Why pretend to be a janitor when he could be teaching all of them? Elijah moved to the edge of the field, crouched behind a barrel, and scanned the base. He didn't look relaxed. He looked like a soldier on a mission. And then, he did something that gave Derek chills. He vanished. Derek blinked. 1 second, the man was there crouched behind the barrel. The next dash gone, no footsteps, no sound, just nothing. Where did he go? Derek crept forward, heart racing, trying to stay low. He reached the spot, looked around. No one, just the quiet whistle of wind and the slow sound of his own breathing. Then from behind him, a voice. You're getting better at moving silently. Derek spun around, startled. Elijah stood behind him, arms crossed, calm as ever. I didn't mean to, Derek stammered. You're curious, Elijah said simply. That's good. I saw you training, Derek admitted. Saw your tattoo? Elijah didn't respond. He looked out across the training yard. You ever wonder what it costs to wear that mark? He asked softly. Derek stayed quiet. It's not just earned through drills or obstacle courses, Elijah continued. It's earned through loss, through pain, through watching your brothers fall one by one. His voice didn't shake, but his eyes told a story Derek couldn't even imagine. The past returns I had a team, Elijah said after a pause. We were deployed to a zone nobody talks about. Off the books. Not even in the files you kids like to dig up. Derek's face turned red. He had looked into Elijah's records. Elijah knew. We were sent to retrieve intel from a village under heavy fire, he continued. Ambushed. 4 of us. Only I came back. He looked down. I didn't walk back into base after that. I walked away. From everything. Derek swallowed hard. Why come here? Elijah turned to him. Thought maybe, just maybe, if I stood in silence long enough, I could tell which of you might be worth fighting for. Derek was speechless. A lesson in silence. Elijah stepped closer. You've got heart, Derek. That's good. But heart without respect is dangerous. Pointed toward the training field. Out there, they're building your body. But here he tapped Derek's chest. This is what keeps your brothers alive. Derek nodded slowly. Sorry we laughed at you. We didn't know. Elijah smiled just a little. That's the point. You weren't supposed to. A deal is made. Elijah slung the pack over his shoulder. I come here at night for a reason. Quiet. Focus. No noise. Derek hesitated. Can I join you just to watch? To learn? The old man studied him. Long, thoughtful. Finally he nodded. Tomorrow. 200. Don't be late. Then he walked off into the shadows again, peering like smoke. Derek stood alone under the moonlight. His heart beat with excitement. With purpose. With something new, not just about proving himself anymore now. It was about becoming worthy. Morning came quickly, but Derek felt different. His body was tired, but his mind was sharp. He had barely slept, but his chest was full of energy. Because now, he had a secret. He had seen the truth about the old man. Not a janitor. It's not a background extra. A warrior. A SEAL. A ghost of legends. Whispers and warnings at breakfast. The recruits sat with their trays, laughing and joking like usual. But Derek was quiet. Focused. Jake nudged him. You okay, man? You look like you saw a ghost. Derek didn't answer. He didn't want to share what he had seen. Not yet. But as he looked across the room, his eyes landed on Lieutenant Mason. The training officer stood by the door, arms crossed, face cold as steel. He watched the recruit's butt. His eyes occasionally glanced outside. He knew something was up. And Derek had a feeling he didn't like Elijah Brooks one bit. Another display of power that afternoon. During gear inspection, a recruit dropped his weapon. It clattered across the gravel. The old man, who had just walked by with a trash bag, reached down, picked up the weapon, and in one swift motion, disarmed it, cleared it, reset it, all without even looking at it closely. It was like watching a master. Pianists play without sheet music. Even the officers paused. Lieutenant Mason, however, stepped forward. "Hey!" he barked. "You don't touch gear unless authorized." Elijah didn't argue. He handed the weapon back, calm and quiet. "I was just making sure no one got hurt, sir," he said. Mason's jaw clenched. He didn't say anything more. He just turned and walked away fuming. Behind the building later that day, Elijah was sweeping near the mess hall when Derek approached him. "I was there." "Like you said," Derek whispered. "Last night." Elijah nodded, not looking up. "Good," he said. "And tonight we begin something real." Derek looked around. "I think Mason is watching you. He's angry." Elijah paused for a second, then said quietly, "Men like him fear what they don't understand, and they hate what they can't control." Derek nodded. "So what should I do?" Elijah's voice was soft. "Keep your mouth shut. Shh. Watch everything. And trust no one yet." He added something strange. "If you want to lead, you must first learn how to disappear." Mason's plan inside the officers' quarters. Lieutenant Mason slammed a file shut. "This is getting out of hand," he growled. Another officer asked, "Sir, it's just an old man." "What's the problem?" Mason snapped. "He's not. Just anything. He's making the recruits look at him for strength, not me." He walked to the window and stared out at Elijah, who was now calmly watering a line of dry bushes by the entrance gate. "I'm going to remind him that this is my base." That night, Derek snuck out again at 2 a.m., just like Elijah told him. The field was empty, moonlight bright. But Elijah wasn't alone this time. He had set up small obstacles cones, gaves, and even makeshift barriers made from crates. Derek froze. "This looks like a training course." Elijah nodded. "Built it from scrap. Quiet. Work teaches quiet lessons." He handed Derek a blindfold. "You trust me?" Derek hesitated, then tied the cloth around his eyes. And then the real lesson began. "Blind training, step forward," Elijah said. Derek did. Duck left. He ducked. Drop. Roll. Listen. Every command was clear, but soft. Elijah didn't shout. He guided. Derek moved like a lost man, but slowly. He adjusted. He began to feel the wind, the ground, even the space around him. "You're learning to hear what others ignore," Elijah whispered. "Fear, wind, silence it, all speaks. You just have to learn the language." By the time Derek removed the blindfold, an hour had passed. He was sweating, his arms were shaking, but for the first time in his life, he felt aware, fully awake. Back to shadows, Elijah packed up the crates and handed Derek a small towel. "You did well," he said. Derek smiled. "I've never trained like that." "You've never needed to," Elijah replied, "until now," as they moved to part ways. Elijah paused. "If I disappear, keep your eyes open. The lesson won't stop. It will just get harder." Then he vanished into the darkness, again like smoke swallowed by night. Trouble brewing the next morning. Something felt off. Derek noticed 2 base guards walking with clipboards near the storage buildings. Another recruit whispered, "I think someone reported Elijah." Derek's stomach sank. Jake leaned over. "They better not mess with him. Not after what we saw." But it was too late. By noon, Elijah Brooks was gone. His broom. Yes. Left near the back wall. His pack. Missing. No one saw him leave. No one knew. Where he went, only Derek noticed the folded piece of paper under the broom. The note, he picked it up. A short message. Written in simple handwriting, "They don't like quiet strength. But real soldiers are made in silence. Keep moving. Keep watching. I'll be back when it matters." E.B. Derek folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. He looked out across the dusty field. Elijah.
Ow!
Brooks was gone, but something inside Derek had changed forever. He wasn't just training to become a SEAL anymore. Now was training to become a leader. The sun beat down like fire over the compound. Sweat ran down every back. Boots hit the dirt hard. Drills were tougher, shouting louder. The mood heavier, but something had changed. Elijah Brooks was gone. No one saw him that day. No quiet sweeping. No calm presence near the ropes. No silent, knowing gaze. Just an empty spot by the wall. And a broom leaning against it. Rumors in the ranks, the recruits whispered between drills. Did they fire him? Maybe he left on his own? Maybe he wasn't even supposed to be here. Derek kept silent. He knew the truth now. Elijah wasn't just some old man. He was a ghost soldier, a living SEAL legend. And now, he was gone. Jake jogged up beside him. This place feels weird without him. Derek nodded. He was watching us. You're training us in his own way. Jake glanced around, then leaned closer. What if we keep doing it? His drills, his way. Derek's eyes lit up. You serious? Jake grinned. Why not? Let's see what he taught you. A challenge as born word spread quickly across the barracks. Derek versus Jake. Old school, SEAL-style contest. No equipment, no machines, just raw skill. The whole squad gathered in the open yard near sunset. 2 sandbags. A pull-up bar. A 100-meter crawl line. Simple, brutal. Elijah style. Jake stepped forward first, stretching his arms. You sure you're ready for this? He teased Derek. No instructors, no rules, just us. Derek nodded. I'm ready. The challenge. Begins the first test. Sandbag carry. 2 rounds, 50 meters. Jake went first, muscles flexing, showing off. He finished fast, dropped the bag with a grin. Easy. And Derek picked it up. He didn't run. He moved steady, balanced, focused. Every step matched Elijah's quiet training. He finished. Just 3 seconds slower. Jake raised an eyebrow. Not bad. Next up, pull-ups. As many as possible in 1 minute. Jake stepped up, started fast. 20, 30, 35, by 40. He was shaking. 43, someone called. Then Derek stepped up. 1, 2, 10. Still breathing steady at 52, he dropped. The squad erupted. Final test. The crawl, the 100-meter low crawl. Through dirt, sand, and sweat. Jake dove in first fast. Aggressive. He charged like a bull, kicking up dust. Halfway through, he started slowing down. By the end, he collapsed, gasping. Then Derek went. He crawled like a shadow, elbows tight, body low. Every inch controlled. At the finish line, he didn't fall. He just stood and looked back. The group stared. He wasn't the biggest, wasn't the fastest. But today, he was the strongest. The bet was more than a game. Jake stepped forward, hand extended. No excuses. You earned that. Derek shook it, breathing hard. You're not the same guy you were last week, Jake added. What changed? Thought of the blindfold. The midnight training. The old man's eyes. He didn't answer. Just said, I started listening. The crowd clapped. Not just for the win, but for what it is. This wasn't about proving who was better. It was about honoring the man who trained them when no one was looking. Mason watches from afar across the yard. Lieutenant Mason stood by the office window. He watched every second of the contest. Watched the recruits cheering Derek like a leader. Watched their respect shift from him to the legacy of Elijah Brooks. And he didn't like it at all. A silent visitor that night, while everyone else was asleep. Derek returned to the spot. Behind the barracks, the place where Elijah used to train in the shadows, he stood there, still, no words, no movement, just respect. He closed his eyes and whispered softly, Wherever you are, I hope you saw that, behind the clouds above. The moon finally broke through. A light wind brushed his face, soft, like a quiet nod. The sky was still dark. Most of the base was asleep, but inside the dimly lit gym, one recruit stood alondric. His hands were chalked. His shirt soaked. His eyes locked on the pull-up bar above him. This wasn't part of regular training. No one ordered him to do it. There were no instructors watching, no scoreboard, no reward. But tonight, he had a goal, 200 pull dash-ups. Not because someone dared him, not because he wanted to impress anyone. He was doing it. For Elijah Brooks, training like a ghost since Elijah disappeared, Derek had changed. He trained differently. He listened more. He moved with purpose. Every night, while others rested, Derek pushed himself in silence, repeating the same patterns Elijah had shown him: crawls, shadow rolls, obstacle work in the dark, balance drills, quiet breathing. Tonight, it was the bar. Elijah had once done 200 pull-ups like it was a warm dash-up now. Derek would try to match that legend. He tightened his grip, took a deep breath, and began. The count begins: 1, 2, 3. The first 20 were easy. 30, 35. His arms started to feel tight. 40, 45, 50. Sweat dripped onto the mat below. He dropped down, shook out his arms. That was just his first set. He closed his eyes, whispered to himself, "Earn it. Don't chase it. Earn it." Same words Elijah had once told him during blindfold training. He stepped back up. Set 2, 51, 52. 60, 70 by 80. His hands burned. But his heart was steady. Memories fueled the fire as he pulled through the next set. Memories rushed in. Elijah kneeling in the shadows saying, "The strongest ones don't yell. They move, they act, they lead in silence." Derek gritted his teeth. 91, 92, 93. He was now shaking. But he kept going. 100 he dropped, collapsed to the ground, face in his hands. "Come on," he whispered to himself. "This isn't for you. It's for him." Surprise visitor footsteps. Derek froze. It was almost 3 a.m. No.
Ow.
One was supposed to be here. He turned his head and saw a figure in the doorway, someone in full uniform, but not just anyone. Lieutenant Mason. The man stepped inside slowly, arms crossed. "Training alone again, Washington?" he asked coldly. Derek stood up, trying not to show pain. "Yes, sir." Mason walked over to the pull-up bar, looked at the chalk, then at Derek's hands, red and worn. "I heard about your little contest last week," Mason said. "Sure. Getting popular." Derek said nothing. Mason leaned in. "Let me give you some advice. People like Elijah Brooks, they don't last long in places like this. You want to make it in this world, you follow my rules. Just not as ghost stories." Derek's jaw tightened. "He was more of a leader than you'll ever be," he said softly. Mason stepped back, eyes narrowing. "You just made a bet you can't afford to lose," he muttered. Then he walked out, boots echoing down the hall. Back to the bar, Derek turned back toward the pull-up bar. His heart was racing, but not from fear, from fire. He was going to finish this. He stepped up. 101, 102, 103. Every pull felt like knives in his shoulders, but he kept going. 120. 130, tears mixed with sweat now. 140, 145. His breath shook. His legs gave out beneath him. He held on to the bar like it was his last hope. 150, 151. The final push, he dropped to his knees, head down, body aching. Then he felt something strange. Something cold on his shoulder. He looked around. No one. But the gym door was open slightly. Just enough for moonlight to shine in. And for a second, he thought he saw him. A silhouette by the doorway. Tall, still silent. Then, gone. Derek stood, took a deep breath and whispered, "For you, sir." Stepped up again. The final 49.152. 155, 160. Each pull-up a battle, but one by one he climbed his mountain. 179. 180. His body screamed. But his heart said, "Don't stop now." 191. 195. 198. Mine. He closed his eyes. 199. And finally, 200. He dropped, collapsed to the mat, arms wide. Tears rolled down his face. He didn't cry from pain. He cried because he knew. He had honored the man who had believed in him when no one else did. Alone, but not really as Derek. Lay on the floor, the wind outside picked up, soft whistle. almost like someone was whispering, "Good work, soldier." The sun had barely risen. Most of the recruits were still asleep. But Derek sat at a corner table inside the admin building, eyes fixed on a dusty old desktop computer. He wasn't supposed to be here. This office was off limits to trainees, but he had a reason. He needed answers. Answers about Elijah Brooks, the man who trained him in shadows, who vanished without a word, who left behind a broom, and a legacy no one wanted to talk about. A hidden name Derek's fingers flew across. The keyboard. He had been searching for hours. He had tried every military search portal he could access. Most showed no record found, or worse, classified. But then something changed. He tried a different spelling. Not Elijah Brooks, but E.L. Brooks. One file appeared. Hidden, archived, almost deleted. The title, SEAL Commander Brooks. E.L. active and unknown. Derek's hands trembled as he opened it. A ghost comes to life. There it was. Full name, Elijah Lawrence Brooks. Rank, Commander Unit. SEAL Team 6 Special Operations Status. Missing in action, presumed deceased, last seen, Northern Iraq. Classified zone mission code. Blackwind final note. Body not recovered. Deemed unrecoverable. File closed by. Order of LTM Mason. Derek froze. LTM Mason. The same Mason who now ran their training compound. His blood ran cold. He closed Elijah's file. As that meant. He knew Elijah was alive. He knew he had come back. And he covered it up. A dangerous truth. Derek looked around. The office was still quiet. He printed the file fast then, deleted the trace from the search history. He folded the paper and tucked it deep into his boot as he walked out. The wind picked up again, like a brush across his face, like Elijah was. Still watching, showdown in the barracks later that day, while the recruits changed for drills, Jake spotted Derek. "You okay?" he asked. Derek nodded. "I found something." Jake raised an eyebrow. "About him?" Derek pulled out the folded file. Jake read it slowly. His eyes widened. He was one of them. A real commander, Derek said. And Mason closed the file. Jake looked up, so he knew. Derek nodded. "I think he's trying to erase him completely." Mason strikes back that afternoon. Lieutenant Mason stormed into the courtyard. His face was tight. Jaw clenched. He called. "All the recruits into formation? You boys have had too many distractions," he barked. "There's been talk, whispers. That stops now," he paced. "I don't care what ghost stories you believe in. I don't care who you think trained you. This base follows one chain of command, and it ends with me." He stared directly at Derek, and anyone caught digging into old files, breaking protocol, or chasing ghosts will be discharged immediately. Silence. No one moved, but everyone was thinking the same thing. He was scared. Scared of what they were learning. Scared that the ghost of Elijah Brooks was stronger than his orders. Jake's bold move that night. Back in the barracks, Jake stood up. "We can't let him erase the truth." Derek looked up from his bunk. "What do you mean?" Jake grinned. "Tomorrow morning? I'm getting everyone together. You'll show them the file." Derek hesitated. "You sure?" Jake nodded. "They need to know who really built this place, and who really deserves our respect." A silent figure returns, but just as Derek nodded back, just as Jake walked toward the door, they heard it. A broom, dragging lightly across concrete. Jake turned fast, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" Derek stood slowly. He opened the back door of the barracks and stepped out into the night. No one was there, but on the wall, right where the broom used to rest, was a fresh print in the dust. A handprint. Still warm. He whispered under his breath, "Elijah." Next morning, the air at the SEAL training compound felt heavier than usual. Recruits lined up for roll call, their boots stamping into the dirt. But whispers moved faster than orders. "Did you hear? They found a handprint behind the barracks. He's back." No one said his name, but everyone knew. Elijah Brooks. The ghost. The legend. The man who trained them in silence and vanished like smoke. And now they were ready to speak for him. Jake takes the lead. Jake stood tall near the obstacle yard. Beside him, Derek. Holding the printed file in his hand, they waited until the last drill ended and called the recruits over. Some looked nervous, others excited. But every single one came. Jake raised his voice. You've all heard stories. You've all seen him, the old man who moved like a seal, fought like a seal, and disappeared like one. He pointed to Derek. He found the truth. Derek stepped forward, unfolded the file. His name is Elijah Lawrence Brooks, Commander SEAL Team 6, missing in action for 7 years. Presumed dead? By the same man who's in charge of us now? He lifted the paper high. Lieutenant Mason closed this file. He knew, and he lied to all of us. Silence fell. Then a voice from the back whispered, He trained me during my night shift once. Another said, He taught me how to clear a weapon, faster than any instructor. And one by one, the recruits began nodding. Mason arrives. The crowd had barely started reacting when a sharp voice cut through the yard. Is this nonsense? Lieutenant Mason. He stormed into the group, eyes cold, voice loud. You're spreading lies. Don't care what you think you found, Jake interrupted him. This isn't a lie, sir. It's his file. Your name is right here. He held the paper up. Mason snatched it from his hand, ripped it in two. Unauthorized access, Mason barked. You think a piece of paper proves anything? Brooks is gone. He's not part of this base. He was never cleared to return. He stared down Derek. You're one wrong step away from being removed. But Derek didn't flinch. He looked Mason in the eyes and said quietly, You're scared. Not of me, not of Jake. You're scared of what Elijah taught us. The other recruits murmured. Their silence turned into something more powerful presence. They didn't yell. They didn't run. They just stood together, like soldiers, like brothers, like men Elijah Brooks would have been proud of. A surprise. Message suddenly. A voice called from the edge of the yard. Sir, there's a visitor at the main gate. One of the guards ran up, out of breath. It's a man. Says his name is. He stopped, then whispered Elijah Brooks. The yard froze. Mason's face went pale. No, he muttered. Not he can't be, but it was too late. The main gate creaked open, and there he was. Elijah Brooks, same calm face, same silent steps, same presence that made every recruit instinctively straighten their backs. He wore simple clothes, nothing fancy, but on his wrist, it's the same old Navy band, and tattooed on his forearm, now clearly visible, is a SEAL trident. He walked to the center of the yard, didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The recruits slowly lined up behind him, one by one, even. Jake, even Derek, until the entire unit stood behind the man they truly respected. A reckoning Lieutenant Mason stood frozen, hands clenched. What do you think you're doing, Brooks? He shouted. You were discharged. You left. You don't belong here. Elijah looked at him for a long moment, then finally spoke. I may not belong in your office. He said quietly, but I belong where soldiers are built, Mason barked. You're trespassing, but Elijah raised a hand, calm and strong. No, you're trespassing on their future. You train their backs. I train their hearts. The entire yard was silent, and then one recruit stepped forward. I want to be trained by him. Then another, and another, until every voice spoke the same truth. We follow him. Mason walks away. Lieutenant Mason looked around, saw that he had lost control, not by force, not by fight, but by truth. He turned sharply and walked away, face stiff, lips silent. No one stopped him. No one saluted because in that moment, he didn't matter anymore. A new chapter begins. Elijah looked around the yard. His eyes didn't show pride, only responsibility. You want to be real soldiers? He asked quietly. The group nodded. Then, meet me here tomorrow. 0200 hours we begin. He turned and walked away slowly. The sun hit his shoulders. The recruits watched him like a hero walking out of a war zone, but Derek knew. This was just the beginning. 2 a.m., while most of the base slept under the stars, a group of young men stood in the open field wide awake, silent and alert. They weren't waiting for an officer. They weren't forced to be there. They came. Because of him, Elijah Brooks, no longer the janitor, no longer the mystery. Now, he stood before them as their true instructor. SEAL, a leader, a living legend. And tonight was his first official training. No lights, no yelling there were. No spotlights, no whistles. No barking orders. Only Elijah's voice, low, steady, sharp like a blade. If you want to pass SEAL training, you'll need strength. But if you want to survive in real missions, you need silence, discipline, instinct. He handed each recruit a blindfold, the same kind he once gave Derek. Derek knew what was coming. The others didn't. This is not a game, Elijah said. You'll train without sight, without sound. Only trust and the feel of the world around you. Into the shadows, one by one, the recruits tied their blindfolds. Then Elijah moved. Among them, like a shadow himself. He gave instructions in whispers. Take 3 steps forward. Drop, crawl, feel the ground. Stop breathing so loudly. It was chaos at first. One recruit bumped into a pole, another crawled into a ditch. Jake fell face first in the sand, but Elijah never laughed, never shouted. He just said, learn from failure. Pain is not punishment, it's information. Derek's turn when Elijah reached Derek. He didn't give directions. He just whispered, show them. And Derek did. Blindfold on, he moved through the yard like he had done many nights before. Elbows tight, breaths even, every step a memory of Elijah's teachings. When he stopped, the rest were silent. Even Jake stared. Elijah spoke again. This is not talent. This is repetition. This is respect for the quiet work that no one sees. The old techniques returned, then Elijah brought out small, strange tool scraps of metal, rope, and water bottles filled with sand. What is this stuff? One recruit asked. Elijah smiled slightly. This is your gym. He made them lift. Bottles overhead until their arms trembled. Tie ropes around their waists and crawl up hills backward. Balance bricks on their heads while walking in a straight line. Every task looked ridiculous. But every task pushed their bodies and their focus to the limit. Derek whispered to Jake. This is how he trained in the shadows. This is what made him unstoppable. The test of stillness as the final hour approached, Elijah gave one last task. Sit, still, eyes closed. Don't move, don't itch, don't twitch. If you move, you fail. They sat in a line facing the wind. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. A bug crawled on someone's hand. Another felt sweat drip down his back, but no one moved, because they weren't just sitting in silence. They were sitting with purpose. When Elijah finally said, time's up, the group exhaled together. One recruit whispered, that was harder than any pull-up. Elijah nodded. Stillness is strength, and silence is a weapon. Use it well. A message on the walls. The group prepared to leave. Elijah handed each of them a folded cloth. The same time tomorrow, he said. Derek opened his. Inside was a patch. Black thread. Silver symbol. The SEAL trident. But underneath it, stitched in tiny letters, were the words, earned in silence. Jake stared at his. His voice cracked as he said, I've never gotten anything this real from Mason. Not even a handshake. Derek smiled softly. This isn't from a commander. This is from a warrior. In the dark, a spy watches, but as the recruits walked back to the barracks, proud and sore, someone else was watching. From a second-floor office window. Mason, he saw the group. He saw the patches, and he clenched his fist. They're building loyalty around him, he muttered. This ends tomorrow. The next day started like any other, push-ups in the dirt. Obstacle runs before breakfast. Sand in their boots and sweat on their faces, but under the surface, something had changed. Every recruit who trained with Elijah Brooks now carried something different inside them. Confidence. Quiet power. They didn't brag. They didn't shout. They moved like shadows. They followed one man now. Not Lieutenant Mason, but the man who once swept the floor in silence, now trained them like warriors in the night. You're all in trouble that afternoon. Derek and Jake were called into Mason's office. The door slammed behind them. Mason stood behind his desk. Arms crossed. You think this is a game? He hissed. You think you can build your little rebel army behind my back?
Ow.
Derek didn't flinch. Jake folded his arms. We're just learning to be better soldiers, sir, Jake said. Elijah's methods work. Mason stepped closer. Elijah Brooks is not an instructor. He has no authority here. Derek stared at him. Then why are you so scared of him? Mason's jaw clenched. He leaned forward and said, Keep following him, and you'll both be off this base by tomorrow. He opened a drawer and threw down 2 sealed files. Your discharge letters, ready to go. Jake stepped forward and picked one up. He smiled. Then why haven't you signed them yet? Mason didn't answer, because he knew throwing them out would make him look weak. That night, something fell off to a.m. Derek arrived at the usual field, but something was strange. No cones, no training tools, no sign of Elijah. The ground looked too clean. Jake joined him, whispering, Where is everyone? One by one. The other recruits showed up, confused, silent. Then floodlights exploded above them, blinding, harsh, sudden, and from behind the fence armed base guards stepped out. Stand down. Mason's voice booms loot. Mason walked out slowly, spotlight behind him, a radio in his hand. This ends now, he shouted. You're in restricted territory, unauthorized gathering. He pointed at Elijah, who had just emerged from the shadows on the far end of the yard. Brooks, you are trespassing on military property. But Elijah didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He simply said, This isn't your yard, Mason. This is sacred ground, built by men who bled for this country. Mason laughed bitterly. You're a ghost, Brooks. You don't exist in the system anymore. He nodded to a guard. Arrest him. The recruits blocked the way, but before the guard could take a step, Jake stepped in front. Then Derek, then the others. A wall of recruits formed between Elijah and Mason. We trained under him, Derek said calmly. We trust him. We believe in him. Mason shouted, You'll all be discharged. But no one moved. They weren't just protecting a man. They were protecting a truth. Mason makes a call. Mason raised the radio to his lips. I want full security down here now. He snapped, but nothing came back. Only silence. Copy, hello? He asked again, still silence. Then a deep voice came. Through this channel is no longer yours. Mason froze. It was a voice he hadn't heard in years, a voice that haunted him, Commander. Elijah Brooks. The real surprise at that moment. Headlights appeared from the side road. A black military vehicle rolled through the open gate. Out stepped 2 high-ranking SEAL officers. One of them was Commander Ellis, head of regional operations. He stepped forward. What's going on here, Lieutenant Mason? Mason stiffened. Unauthorized activity, sir. This man Brooks is a rogue element. Commander Ellis held up a hand. Enough. We've reviewed the footage, the reports, the training logs.
Ow.
Even the recruits' testimonials. He looked at Elisha and nodded. You've done more for these young men in 2 weeks than this base has in months. Then he turned back to Mason. And you have been lying, suppressing files, misusing your command. You're relieved, effective immediately. Mason breaks. You can't do this to me. Mason shouted. I ran this place. I gave everything. Elijah finally stepped forward. You gave them fear. I gave them strength. Mason lunged toward Elijah in fury, but Elijah caught his wrist midair. Calm, firm, then gently let it go. You're not a warrior, Mason. You just wore the uniform. A new dawn as the sun rose that morning. Mason was escorted off base. His office cleaned out, his name removed from the board, His era ended. And in his place, Elijah Brooks stood with quiet honor. No speech. No celebration, just a line of recruits standing tall, ready to learn, ready to follow, ready to rise. The sun rose over the SEAL training compound. For the first time in weeks, it felt like a new beginning. Lieutenant Mason was gone. The fear he ruled with had vanished, and in his place stood someone different, not someone who barked orders, but someone who had earned every scar, every stripe, and every ounce of respect. Commander Elijah Brooks. The recruits didn't cheer, they didn't shout. They just stood taller, because now they knew the truth, and today, their real training would begin. No more pretending. The base now ran differently. No more empty drills. No more yelling for no reason. No more fake tough. Instead, Elijah walked the grounds like a silent guardian. He corrected with calm hands, taught with quiet words. Led by doing, not just talking. One recruit said he doesn't even raise his voice. But somehow, you still want to follow him. Derek knew why. Because Elijah wasn't building muscles. He was building men. The mirror test that morning. Elijah brought the recruits to the edge of the base. Quiet. Still lake rested. They're almost forgotten. He gave each man a small mirror. Simple. No frame. Just glass. He said, SEAL training isn't about who you are now. It's about who you'll become when everything else is stripped away. He pointed to the lake. Go look into the water. Look into your own eyes. And ask, would you follow the man staring back at you? One by one, the recruits stepped forward. Some stared for minutes. Some cried. Some said nothing at all. But all of them came back. Changed. Jake's moment. Jake stood the longest at the water's edge. When he returned, his hands were shaking. I saw my brother, he said quietly to Derek. He died in combat 2 years ago. He always wanted to be a SEAL. I joined to honor him. But I lost myself in the noise. Derek placed a hand on his shoulder. You found yourself again. Jake nodded. No, he found me. Through Elijah. Elijah's past revealed later that night, Elijah gathered the recruits under the stars. He sat on the ground with them, no ranks, no distance, just men. You want to know what made me disappear? He asked softly. Everyone leaned in. We were sent on a mission, he began. Classified, hostile zone. I led a team of 5. Only I made it back. His voice broke for the first time. I blamed myself. I stepped away, not because I was weak, but because I needed to learn how to live again. The silence was thick. Then, Elijah looked up, and now, I teach so none of you ever have to carry that same weight alone. You already are SEALs, one recruit asked. But when do we officially become SEALs? Elijah shook his head. You think it's about a badge? He stood. You're already SEALs in here, he said, tapping his chest. You just have to believe it, Derek whispered to Jake. I never thought I'd hear those words from someone like him. Jake smiled. Neither did I. But now, I believe it. A visitor from the Pentagon. 2 days later, a black SUV pulled into the compound. Out stepped a man in a dark suit. A sharp haircut, a silver badge. He was from the Pentagon. He asked for Elijah, and for Derek and Jake. In a private room, he spoke quietly. You. Boys may not realize this yet, but the footage of your standoff with Mason went viral in military circles. Derek raised an eyebrow. You're heroes, the agent said. Elijah Brooks is being requested to speak at the Navy Leadership Summit. And you, too, have been offered early field certification. Jake blinked. We're not even done training. The agent smiled. You've been training under the best. That counts. Elijah's response, when they told Elijah the news, he didn't smile. He just nodded. Titles don't matter to me, he said. Men do. But then he looked at Derek and Jake. Go. Speak for those who can't. Lead for those who never had a leader. And never forget, SEAL is not just a word. It's a way of life. 3 weeks later, a sleek black jet touched down. At Andrews Air Force Base near Washington, D.C. Inside were 2 unlikely passengers. Derek Washington and Jake Coleman, one simple SEAL recruits. Now, they were about to stand before the most powerful military minds in the country, but they weren't here for fame, not for medals. They were here because of Elijah Brooks, the man who once swept the sand at their training compound, the man who changed their lives, and now the world wanted to hear his story. The Navy Leadership Summit inside a grand hall filled with Navy commanders, decorated veterans, admirals, and government officials. The lights dimmed. The cameras rolled. The Navy Leadership Summit had begun, and up next on the speaker list, a tribute to Commander Elijah Brooks. As the crowd leaned forward, the announcer said, "Please welcome SEAL trainees Derek Washington and Jake Coleman." The speech begins. Derek stood at the podium. He glanced down at the notes Elijah had given him, but he didn't read them. He looked straight into the sea of uniforms and medals and began. Commander Elijah Brooks didn't teach us with loud orders. He taught us with his silence, with his scars, with the way he watched, listened, and believed in us. Before we believed in ourselves. Jake stepped up beside him. We thought he was just an old janitor. The other officers mocked him. Some ignored him, but we saw something in him, and one night, he started to train us. The crowd was dead silent. The room shifts. Derek pulled out the wrinkled file, the one they had found in the restricted military archive. He held it high. This file was almost erased, his name removed, his mission classified, but his impact paused. His impact built real SEALs. Jake stepped back up. And if you want to build the next generation of warriors, then train them with more than shouting. Train them with heart. Like Commander Elijah Brooks. Standing ovation in the room went quiet for 2 seconds. Then someone stood, then another, until the entire summit, from top Navy brass to battle-scarred SEALs, stood and clapped. The sound shook the room. Derek looked at Jake, and Jake whispered, "He did it. Finally got his honor back." A surprise announcement suddenly. The host stepped back onto the stage. He held up a gold medal. Commander Brooks was never officially honored after returning from his last mission. Today that changes. The crowd turned, and from the side hallway, Elijah Brooks stepped into the light, wearing a clean Navy uniform, medals restored, eyes steady but humble like always. The crowd cheered again, louder, fiercer. A commander lost in history was finally home. The moment of truth. As Elijah walked up, the announcer said, "Commander Elijah Brooks, for your bravery, leadership, and silent sacrifice, the Navy formally restores your command rank and awards you the Medal of Honor." Pinned it on his chest. Elijah didn't smile. He didn't cry. He simply nodded once, saluted, and said, "I didn't do this for medals. I did this so my boys would come home." Private words later, in a quiet hallway, Elijah pulled Derek and Jake aside. He handed them each something, not a medal, not a certificate, but to worn patches. SEAL insignias, old, faded, and real. "These were mine," he said. "Now they're yours." Derek's hands trembled. Jake's voice cracked. "Sir, we don't deserve this." Elijah looked them both in the eyes. "You earned it the moment you chose. Respect over fear, silence over ego, purpose over pride." A call from the president as they prepared to leave the summit. Staff member rushed up. "There's a call coming in for Commander Brooks from the White House." Elijah raised an eyebrow. He took the call. Derek and Jake watched from a distance. Elijah said little, just listened. Then finally he replied, "I'm honored. I don't need a desk. I need dirt. Give me the next group of recruits. It's where I belong." 2 weeks after the Navy summit, a transport helicopter flew low over the dusty hills of California. Inside, sitting in silence, was a man returning not as a janitor, not as a forgotten ghost, but as a commander, Elijah Brooks. His Medal of Honor had been pinned. His name had been cleared. His past, once buried, was now a story shared in every Navy base across the country. But Elijah didn't care about headlines. He wasn't interested in awards. He had one mission now: train the next generation. The right way the compound holds. Its breath back at the SEAL training compound. Word had already spread. He's coming back. Not as a cleaner, as a commander. Real training starts now. The recruits lined up at the yard before sunrise. Boots polished. Uniforms straight. Even the senior officers stood ready. They had read the files, seen the summit speech. Now they were about to meet the man. Again, but this time with respect. The landing, the helicopter touched down in the center field. Wind kicked up dust as the door opened. Elijah stepped out, wearing his full uniform, SEAL trident shining on his chest. But his eyes calm as ever. No smile. No drama, just focus. He walked toward the lined-up recruits. They stood still, silent then. Elijah spoke, soft but sharp. No more games. No more shouting matches. You want to be CLs? You train from the soul out, not the muscles in? Derek and Jake salute at. The front stood Derek and Jake, shoulders back, eyes proud. When Elijah reached them, they saluted. He nodded. No. More calling me sir, he said. From now on, you work as brothers. Derek smiled. Yes, brother. Jake grinned. Ready to bleed again? Sigh, I mean. Brother. The other recruits chuckled. Elijah's face almost cracked into a smile. Almost new recruits. New rules that afternoon. Elijah called a meeting. A fresh batch of new recruits had just arrived. They were cocky, loud, full of muscles. Zero. Discipline, one joked. Wait. The janitor's the commander, now? The entire room went silent. Then Derek stepped forward. He unbuttoned his shirt and revealed the old, faded patch Elijah had given him. You don't know who you're talking about, he said, but you're about to find out. A hard lesson begins that night. Elijah ran their first training. No lights, no yelling, just darkness and pain. Obstacle crawling in silence. Breath control in freezing water. Blindfolded navigation with zero guidance. One of the new recruits collapsed halfway. Sir, this isn't fair. Elijah knelt beside him. Combat isn't fair. War isn't fair. You want comfort? Go home. You want brotherhood? Get back up. The recruit rose trembling. Soaked, shaking, but he rose. Because Elijah didn't command with fear. He commanded with truth. Respect earned by the next morning. The new guys weren't laughing anymore. They moved slower, listened harder, spoke less. One of them approached Derek. You were right, he said quietly. I thought he was just some old guy. But now I see, he's the real deal. Derek smiled. Welcome to the real training. A gift from the Navy that afternoon. A delivery truck arrived. Inside brand, new equipment, advanced training gear, medical kits, and a sealed box addressed to Commander Elijah Brooks. Inside was a handwritten letter. To the one who turned silence into strength, your method is now the Navy's model. Train them well. Office of the Joint Chiefs. Jake held the letter and grinned. You're a national secret now, he said. Elijah just replied, no, I'm a teacher, and class has only just begun. 3 weeks had passed since Commander Elijah Brooks returned to the SEAL compound. The new recruits were no longer arrogant. The old ones were sharper than ever, and the entire base now moved with one energy, silent. God. Disciplined. Focused. There were no easy days. Because Elijah didn't just train muscles. He trained minds. But now, it was time. He called all the trainees. Into the dirt yard one evening. Stars hung overhead. The wind was cold, but his voice was steady. Tomorrow, Elijah said, you will face your final test. What is the final test? The recruits looked at each other nervously. One asked, Sir, what is it? Elijah looked at them all. There's no obstacle course, no swim drills, no weapons. He paused. Your final test is your heart. Confused whispers spread. Jake frowned. What does that mean? Derek stayed silent. He had a feeling he already knew. A letter before dawn at 3 a.m. Each recruit found an envelope on their bunk. No name. Just a stamp of the Navy trident. Inside each letter was one instruction. Asterisk, asterisk, pack your gear. Port to the southern cliff at 0400 hours. Say nothing. Follow no one. Trust no one but yourself. Asterisk, asterisk, no one spoke. Just the sound of boots hitting gravel as each recruit moved silently into the night. The cliffside test. When the recruits reached the cliff, the wind was fierce. No guards, no lights. Only Elijah standing at the edge. He didn't speak. He pointed to a set of 5 narrow trails each, leading down the rocky cliffside. All different. Some steep, some jagged. One disappeared halfway down. Then he said, "You must choose a path. You must descend alone. And at the bottom, you must prove you still remember who you are." One recruit asked, "What are we looking for?" Elijah looked at him hard. "You're not looking for anything? You're remembering everything?" A journey downward. Derek chose the third path, steep, covered in loose stone. Every step required balance and silence. His hands bled as he slid. His arms shook, but he remembered Elijah's words. Stillness is strength. Silence is survival. Halfway down, he saw a burned seal patch buried in the rocks. He picked it up. It was scorched. Torn, he held it to his chest. This wasn't just a test of strength. This was a walk through Elijah's past. Jake's moment of fear. Jake took the trail that vanished. It led to a drop. For a second, he panicked. Nothing but air below him. Then he saw it, a rope ladder hidden behind a boulder. He grinned. "Old man," he whispered. "You really planned this, didn't you?" He climbed down slowly. At the bottom, he found something in the sand, a worn photo, 5 men's seals, smiling. One of them was Elijah, on the back. "We didn't all make it, but we all mattered." Jake wiped a tear. The fire circle at the bottom of each trail. A fire waited. 1 flame, 5 logs, no one else around. Each recruit arrived from their own journey, bleeding, dirty, tired, but they sat in silence. And then Elijah appeared, out of the shadows, as quiet as always. "You're ready." He didn't ask questions. He just stood in the center of the circle. You all came alone. You all faced fear. You all remembered the men who came before you. He looked around the fire. You passed. The group didn't cheer. They just looked at each other, whole. Then Elijah pulled something from his satchel. One by one, he handed each recruit a small box. Inside, a seal trident, made of dark steel, custom-made, silent in design, not flashy, not gold, not from a store, but earned. Never forget this night. As the fire crackled, Elijah spoke one last time. Seal is not something you wear. It's something you carry. And tonight, you carry it forever. No one slept that night. They just sat around the fire. Quiet, complete, changed. The sun rose slowly over the SEAL training compound, but today, it felt different. There was no shouting, no rushing boots, no last-minute drills, only quiet, calm. Today was graduation. After months of sweat, pain, broken bones, and midnight trials, the recruits were no longer just trainees. They were now SEALs, and at the center of it all, watching silently, stood Commander Elijah Brooks, dressing like warriors inside the barracks. Each recruit stood in front of a mirror, not in t-shirts and mud-stained boots. Today, they wore sharp Navy uniforms. Each one fitted, pressed, and perfect. But more important than the fabric, each one now carried the steel-sealed trident Elijah had given them the night before. Derek held his gently in his palm. He whispered to himself, "I don't need a crowd. I don't need applause. This is enough." Jake stood behind him. "You ready?" he asked. Derek smiled, more than ever. The ceremony begins. Rows of folding chairs were placed in front of the stage. Family members flew in. Officers from across the country came to watch. But none of the recruits looked for cameras or attention. They only waited for one man to step forward. And finally, he did. Elijah. Elijah's speech, no microphone, no fancy words. He stepped up to the front and looked across the sea of graduates. "You were broken when you arrived," he began. "Some of you came here running from something. Some came trying to prove something, and some of you had no idea who you were." He paused. "But today, you stand taller. Not because of me, Because of the silence you chose to fight through. He pointed to his heart. This is where your SEAL trident lives, not on your chest. One final honor, Commander Ellis from the Navy stepped up next. He cleared his throat. We usually close with a certificate and a handshake, he said. But today, we do something else. He turned to Elijah. Commander Brooks, for your service, sacrifice, and rebirth as a leader, we officially named this training field the Elijah Brooks Compound. Gasps. Applause. Tears. For the first time in public, Elijah looked down. His voice broke as he whispered, I didn't come back for this. I came back for them. Derek takes the stage. After the formal ceremony, they allowed one graduate to speak. Derek walked up slowly. He looked at the crowd, then back at Elijah. When I came here, I didn't trust anyone, not even myself. But then a man who cleaned the floor showed me how to rise. He took a breath. Commander Brooks didn't teach us how to fight enemies. He taught us how to fight the voices inside us that said we weren't enough. The audience stayed still, soaking in every word, salutes that meant something when the ceremony ended. The new SEALs stood in a line, one by one. They walked up to Elijah, not to say goodbye, but to salute, not the military kind. A silent, slow nod, hand over the heart. Elijah returned each one. When Jake stepped forward, he didn't speak. He just hugged him. A long, firm embrace between student and teacher, the quiet after that evening. The compound was empty. Families had left. Officers gone. But Elijah stayed behind, sitting alone at the edge of the training yard. Derek came up beside him. You okay? Elijah nodded. I'm not used to endings, he said. Derek sat down beside him. This wasn't an ending, sir. This was a beginning. 3 months had passed since the graduation ceremony. The Elijah Brooks compound was no longer just a nickname. It was official. A new plaque stood at the gate, and beside it, a photo. Elijah, Derek, Jake, and the rest of the first class, smiling, standing tall, a legacy carved into stone. But Elijah Brooks wasn't done, not even close. A new bus arrives. It was early morning when the new group of recruits arrived. Fresh faces, buzz cuts, bright eyes. Some were confident. Some looked scared. Most were silent. They didn't know what to expect. All they'd heard was, "You're lucky. You're training under the legend himself." They stepped off the bus and lined up. No officer yelled at them. No one barked orders. Just a man standing calmly at the edge of the field, sweeping dust with a quiet hand. The circle begins again. One recruit whispered, "Who's that old guy with the broom?" The others shrugged. Then the man stood straight. He put the broom aside and walked forward when he spoke. It wasn't loud, but every word hit like thunder. "I'm Commander Elijah Brooks," he said, "and today your journey begins." The recruits stood still. One of them, tall, unsure, raised his hand nervously. "Sir, is it true you used to be a janitor here?" Elijah smiled slightly. "I still am," he said. "I clean the dust that weak men leave behind. New faces, same fire over." The next few weeks, Elijah trained them hard. No shortcuts, no mercy. But always with purpose. One night, when the recruits complained about the cold, Elijah handed them rope and said, "Build fire with your own hands. Don't wait for comfort. Create it." When one failed a drill and cried in frustration, Elijah sat beside him. "Failing doesn't make you weak," he said softly. "Quitting does." Derek and Jake returned one day. A black car rolled into the base. Out stepped two familiar faces. Derek and Jake, now full Navy SEALs, field-proven, respected. But they didn't come to show off. They came to give back. They stood beside Elijah as co-trainers. "You taught us in the dark," Derek said to him. "Now we'll help teach in the light," Jake added. "We're not done building warriors." The fire lives on that night. Elijah gathered the new recruits around a fire just like he did months ago. But this time, Derek spoke. He held up a small mirror. "You'll learn to fight. You'll learn to survive. But most important, You'll learn to face the man in the mirror. He passed it to the next recruit. One by one, they looked at their reflection. One by one, they started their own journey. Elijah's final message as the night went quiet. Elijah stood up. He looked at the fire and then at the stars. He spoke the words he always saved for the ones who made it through. Strength is not in shouting. Power is not in fists. Real warriors fight in silence, and when you leave this place, fight for those who can't fight for themselves. The legacy continues. The camera zooms out. The fire burns quietly in. The center of the field, new recruits sit in silence. The night sky stretches above them, and in the shadows 3 men watch. Elijah, Derek, Jake, different generations. One mission. The CSLs will go on, not just with weapons, but with wisdom, not just with orders, but with honor, because of one man who was once mocked, then remembered, then followed. And finally, respected by all,